It's time for the big conversations, telling stories of movers and shakers, of industry giants and daring professionals. It's time for the conversations that change your perspective on life, the kind of conversations that shape entrepreneurs and move careers forward. If you don't know where these conversations are found, we are sending you a GPS. But if you're listening to this voice right now, you are here. Welcome to the Growth Podcast. This is the GPS.
All right, welcome to another episode of the Growth Podcast. Our conversations continue happening. We focused on entrepreneurship last week. This week, I think we're now back to conversations around building a career. And I do have a guest who really has done that for herself. And I do know that by the end of this conversation, you also will be enlightened. And we will obviously begin to approach your own career differently. Or if you're on the path she's on, you obviously will keep on in that particular direction. So my guest for this week's episode is Emmy Kumwenda. She is the head of corporate and institutional banking at Standard Chartered Bank. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Sue. It's good to be here.
It's good to finally have you.
Yes. Actually, I was avoiding the word finally. Because we've been talking about this for a long time, but I'm glad it's finally happened.
Yeah, no, given the nature of your job, I perfectly understand.
And yours.
Yeah, no, but I'm happy that you finally managed to create some time.
Yes, thank you.
How's the bank doing?
The bank is doing well. It's been a good year. We're looking forward to even bigger things next year.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
So we have this tradition on the podcast where I have these cards, right? Mm-hmm. So these are like conversation starters, like icebreakers. Okay. Uh-huh. So I want you to pick 4 of these cards.
Okay.
Read out the question, then you answer it. Just don't look at the question. Just pick from the back. Yeah. Uh-huh. Okay, you're just picking them in that order. Cool, that's fine. Uh-huh. Okay, 4. You picked 1. I like the way you're picking them. No, that's already 4. That one is 2. There are 2 of them.
There are 2 here?
Yes.
Okay, let me take the one blue one.
Okay.
I'll put back this one.
Okay, yeah. So let me keep
take
these.
a blue one.
Yeah, so you can read out one, give us an answer, read out one, give us an answer.
Wow.
Those ones are really helping us get to know you a bit better.
Which teacher had the biggest impact on you and why? I would have to say a lady called Mrs. Mutonga. She taught me in grade 6 and 7. And the reason why is because she had such passion for her work. And just before our grade 7 exams, she took a few of us and she said, let me prepare you for the exams, and at no cost at all. So we used to go to her house and have these extra classes. And she made such an impact on me. And it showed me that it's not just about the money sometimes, and it's not just about ambition, but there are people out there who just genuinely want to do good.
Okay.
Yep.
That's good. Next card.
Describe a life lesson that took you more than once to learn. Even the ones we're still learning. Okay, let me go to the next card.
Okay.
What do you love about yourself that you worry others will struggle to accept? I'm very candid. I like that about myself. Okay. It's very clear to people what I mean. But sometimes my candor can be taken as rudeness or arrogance. But I don't mean that at all. So that's the one I worry about.
Okay.
The last one, what failure do you feel embarrassed to talk about? I think I would have to say one interview I attended. Even when I walked out, I knew it was bad. Yeah, so the other question, describe a life lesson that took you more than once to learn. I think the lesson that I keep learning is that sometimes doors take long to open, and there are other times when we spend so much time looking at the shut door, we fail to recognize that windows are opening and closing behind us. Okay. So it's not always the door that's going to open, it's the window. But the biggest challenge for me is recognizing when the window is opening. So I have to keep learning that lesson.
Wow, I'd like us to talk about that lesson later. So that's at least now I have an idea, who Amy is. How long have you been at the bank?
I've been with the bank for 15 years.
15 years?
Yes. Before that, I was with another bank for 7 years. It's giving you an idea what my age looks like. But yes, I've been in the banking sector for 15 plus 7 is 22. Is
Yes.
22. Yes, 22 years.
Okay. And how has been the 22 years?
It doesn't feel like 22 years. And it always feels like I'm learning something new. I started my career in operations, and I've moved around quite a bit in the bank. I started my career in operations, and then I moved into within different departments in operations, and then I moved into the frontline, and I've been in the frontline for like the last 15 years, but in different parts of the frontline. So I've done insurance companies, I've serviced insurance companies, financial institutions, government relations, corporates, local corporates, SMEs, medium enterprises, agribusiness. So it's different parts of the bank, energy, which I like very much, different parts of the bank. So it doesn't feel like 22 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you are head of corporate and institutional banking. What did you study?
I'm an economist by training. I did economics with statistics, and then I did an MBA in 2014, an executive MBA in 2014. I studied at UNZA. My first degree I did at University of Zambia, and I completed in 2001. And then in 2013 actually, I went to France, to INSEAD, to do my MBA.
Okay. I was having this conversation with someone, and I was saying, when I get my master's from outside or my undergrad from outside, and then I come here and I'm competing with those that went to UNZA and CBU and whatnot, do you feel that people like maybe you who got your qualifications from outside have like a leverage in terms of when we're looking at who should we employ for this position?
I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure we're there yet. But I think if you study abroad, if you get your master's abroad and you are deliberate about the university, I was deliberate. I really wanted to go to INSEAD because of the reputation it carries, because I work for a global organization and I would like to be considered for positions within the globe. So if I have an education from a reputable or a renowned university, so to speak, and reputable is the wrong word, then it's easier for people to relate to that. Notwithstanding, education and capabilities and intelligence are not even correlated. I find they are not. Some of the smartest people I've worked for had no formal tertiary education. I worked for this gentleman who was extremely smart. I worked for another gentleman who was extremely smart with just an undergrad. And so the two are not necessarily correlated.
Okay.
Yeah.
And your exposure, the people that you've come to see and work with from outside, where do you think the differences are with us here at home in terms of professionalism, in terms of the drive, in terms of ambition? How different are we? Because people say Zambians were very humble. We're not, very go-get attitude, that aggression that Nigerians, for example, have.
But you see, you compare with Nigeria, which has a population which is like 4 or 5 times our population. Same thing with China, which has a population of close to the population of Africa, the whole continent. I think that Zambians are not aggressive by nature. We can be assertive, and there's no shame in that. Some of the most developed economies, like the Japanese economy, the people are not aggressive. So I think it's really just finding that sweet spot between what do we want to be known for. Because the Japanese are known for their excellence and their pride of officership. So they really take pride in doing a good job. For us, what are we known for? Are we known for being friendly? Are we known for being hardworking? And it's really just up to an individual what they want to be known for. What I find from my colleagues who come from outside the country, who work in Zambia, is they really struggle to leave. Zambia is a really nice country. The people are very nice, sometimes humble to a fault. But you do find some very hardworking professionals and some very eloquent and competent professionals as well, just like any other country. For me, I find that as an introvert, I find that noise does not always equate capacity and quality. So I really like to look for the quality in an individual before I can make a determination.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was your first job? How was it? How was your first job?
My first job was temping. I was temping for the Liquidators of Credit Africa bank, and we were sorting out files. It was a room of files that never ended. So when the contract was finished, I was like, we finished these files. So that was my first temporary job. But my first real job was when I went to work for Citibank from university, and I went to work in operations. And it was quite a shock for me. When you come from university, from school, you have all these visions of grandeur, like when I start work, this will be my salary, this will be my car. And, you find that you can't afford much. And you find that the environment is new, it's sometimes aggressive. And you really have to work hard to find yourself. And I remember telling my father once that, the work is so hard. Sometimes we go to work in the morning. And I remember that time we were printing dividend checks. I went to work on Friday morning and we were printing dividend checks, and I came back home on Saturday morning at 7 hours. And I said, I'm not having this. I think I want to stop work. And my mom said, yes, Manya wa Kumwenda, because I'm Tumbuka. She says, Manya wa Kumwenda, Mwana is working too hard. Meaning, Mr. Kumwenda, this child is working too hard. And then my dad said, yes, I agree. Then she says, let us stop work. And my dad said, yeah, I agree, my daughter, you can stop work. But I think you should just find another place to live. But you can stop work. So I just went back to work. And here we are 22 years later.
What was your attitude like when you're temping and in your first job? And I want you to draw this to today. Young, fresh graduates, just finished school. I come to the bank, I'm temping, for example, or I am on a graduate trainee. What kind of attitude did you have that you feel like others also should embrace?
I think when I started my first job at Citibank, I was curious. I wanted to make things better. I was extremely hardworking, and I was curious because at the time we were doing account opening, and everything was very manual. And I said, okay, we open accounts. We used to service clients in the morning, and then in the afternoon we'll be opening accounts. And then I said, I think we need to establish a database for the accounts rather than put it in a book. And so I established something in Excel at the time, and it was easier for us to find stuff. If something has gone out, then we'd record. If something needs updating, we'd record. It was things like that. I mean, it seemed like a big thing at the time. Millennials today will probably not relate to this, but it seemed like a big thing at the time. And I think that wherever I go, I try to make things better than I found them. And I work really hard until I master what I'm doing. I'm also very curious curious across. I span across. So I'm curious about what's happening in different departments. And I try to be helpful.
Okay. Mm-hmm. How do you get noticed? Because some people do a lot of work and they're not noticed.
Yes, but to get noticed, you have to do something different. To get noticed, you have to be the loudest person in the room. And if you aren't the loudest person in the room, you have to make the biggest change. You have to be the most, add the most value. You have to be the most hardworking, perhaps, and the most innovative. So I do that I read a lot. And when I make contributions, they are few, but I like to think they're effective. So I'm probably not the loudest person in the room, but I do speak. And when I speak, I'm very measured. So that's how I make my contribution.
Okay. And your first promotion, how did it come?
My first promotion, I can't remember even my first promotion, but I remember the second promotion when I finally got a bank car. It came because there were some tests we had to do. I really killed myself to pass those tests, and then I finally passed those tests, and then I exceeded my expectations of my boss according to my objectives, and then the promotion came, and then the car came.
The car.
Yes,
the car was a big motivation, eh?
It was such a big motivation at the time, yes. And I think in your 20s, it's things like that really make the big motivation. In your 30s, you try to find your balance. And in your 40s, it's really just about bringing the authentic you. So I'm sure you can guess where I've stopped or what my age is. I'm in my 40s now. And I've found that it's actually the most relaxed so far. The 40s are the most relaxed.
You do the running in your 20s and 30s?
20s and 30s, yes. And also you in the 40s, I find you're also comfortable with who you are. You're not fighting to be somebody you're not. Because you can only be the best version of yourself. I cannot be the best version of Sui. I can only be the best version of Emmy. You know who you are. You do your best to do your best. And some people like it, some people don't. But you try to make a positive impact within the parameters of what is authentic to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you there's something that you mentioned that I want to make a follow-up on, the car. Most people, when they're making decisions, for example, to either accept a job in this company or to move from this company to this company, there are a number of things that they consider. Obviously, 2023, so the car will obviously influence my decision as to whether I should leave this organization or not. But what for you are the key things one must consider when I'm offered a letter of employment at this organization, and let's say I've got 2 offers or I've got none, but I only have this one? What should really be the guiding factor for me to say, you know what, I think this is the best place for me?
You really, as a professional, you really need to have a purpose, your personal purpose. So if I draw myself as an example, I try to be the best wherever I am. And for me, the organizations that resonate with me are those that have the biggest impact. So when I think about impact, like Standard Chartered Bank, in the last couple of years, how many infrastructure projects have we financed and what has been the reach of those projects? So we did one project with ZESCO, which powered 15,000 homes. We financed we did the first ever financing with sustainable deposits. We also participated in Kafulafuta Water, which now gives water and sanitation has improved the sanitation for at least 1,000 homes. And when I think about who do I want to work for, I want to work for an organization that has that kind of impact. That's what I tell when we discuss with my colleagues. We will never be a bank with 20 branches. We will not be that bank. But where is the thing that differentiates us from the competition? When you think about Standard Chartered Bank and where we are with the government is with the debt restructure negotiations, if you look at the lenders, Standard Chartered Bank is the only local bank which is actually a lender to the government. And these are the infrastructure projects that we have financed. So that is where we play as a bank. And really, for me, that resonates with who I want to be associated with. Okay.
And you've obviously interviewed people. What turns you off in a candidate? Your job interview start very well. Tell us about what turns you off in a candidate.
Lack of preparedness. There's one young lady who said to me she worked in the bank, and another young man who works in the bank, and they wanted to come to corporate banking. So I said, what do you know about corporate banking? And the young lady said, it was a casual conversation. She said, nothing. She giggled. So I, as a woman, another woman giggling is not fascinating to me. You know what I mean? I expected her to have done some basic homework, because if you're going to land a request like that, you must have valid reasons. And if she's speaking to me, there's the personal side of me, but there's also the professional side of me. The professional side of me wants to know that when I hire somebody, life is going to be easier for everybody within the department. And I'm not hiring a future clerk. I'm hiring a future replacement of Emmy. So when I look at a young person I hire, I want them to be a better version or to be the best version of me or whatever, to improve the quality of leadership so that when I leave, there's something that we can boast about. But if somebody can't be bothered to do the barest minimum to impress and to show that they've done the work, then it's very difficult, no matter how good you look or no matter who your dad is or your mom is, for me to give you a job.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you personally ever been passed over for promotion?
Yes, several times.
How did you deal with it?
It's hard. It's very hard. I remember there was one cycle of promotions where I really was expecting to get it. I had done phenomenal that year. And my friend got promoted. I didn't. And it really broke me. And there was a part of me that wanted to step away from the work arena. But then I spoke to several people, and disappointment is common. We are not always going to get what we want. And sometimes unfair things happen. Sometimes bad things happen to good people. And sometimes our own perception of ourselves is higher than others' perception of ourselves. So what I did then is I asked around and I said, what do I need to do to move to the next level? Armed with that information and who I should be lobbying this promotion from, what I should be doing, putting myself out there more, I prepared myself. And within just a few months, I actually got the promotion.
Okay. Mm-hmm. The attitude that you embrace with, because obviously there's you, right, who feels like I'm going to get this promotion. Mm-hmm. And then there's a person that then gets the promotion. And then you have to then work with them. How is that?
It's not easy. It's really not easy. It's, that big green monster which we see on the emojis. You feel like that, but you have to smile. But you have to smile. And I think it's got a lot to do with building maturity. Maturity is not always showing what we feel. And it's also being humble enough to accept that sometimes this person is better than me at this, and maybe my time hasn't come. So it teaches you, not getting what you want, teaches you maturity, I think. That's what I learned from that.
What principles would you say have worked for you in building your career?
The principles that have worked for me, the first one is that, thank you. So the first one is that I try to have integrity. I have integrity. I do what I say I'll do. And if I can't do it, I'll tell you. So when I told you that I'm just a minute away, Sui, I was a minute away. Because I know a lot of times people say, I'm just a minute away, but they're in town. I mean, it's kind of...
I can even see you.
Imagine. And you hear that a lot, like, okay, I'm just at the gate. And people are lying. So integrity is very important because it also teaches people to be able to rely on you. When people are thinking about somebody that they want to hand the baton over, they want somebody that is going to actually be there to receive it. Because sometimes people are inconsistent. They come today, they don't come tomorrow, or the child is sick. I know children get sick, but there are people who always have an excuse. You know those people. And so I try to have integrity. The other one is that I really am curious. So if you give me if there's a word I don't understand, if you tell me a word today that I don't understand, when I walk out of here, I'll go and check what it means. I try to be curious. I read widely. So I'm curious like that. I read a lot. I'm also very hardworking. And the other thing is I also try to learn something new every day. So I think everybody has something to teach me. The guard at the gate has something to teach me. The lady who tends to my house has something to teach me. The CEO has something to teach me. Doctors have something to teach me. Everybody has something to teach you if only you will listen.
Okay.
Yeah.
In most workplaces, you find that supervisors and subordinates don't have like candid conversations. You are lucky if you have a supervisor that is really invested in your growth and they want to see you rise. Unfortunately for others, they never want you to rise above them. They always either make your life difficult or whatnot. What do you make of these workplace dynamics, boss and subordinate, subordinate and boss? And most people find that the work is not moving because the boss is difficult to work with.
Yes. So when you work in a big organization, the most important thing to remember is who your stakeholders are. Your boss is a key stakeholder, yes, but so are their peers. So are their subordinates. So are their superiors. So if one person who is your immediate line manager is difficult to work with, you can still build a reputation around yourself with their peers and with their superiors in a way that doesn't slight them, that makes them look good. before you know it, you probably won't be working for that boss anymore. I think that's the best way to do it. Those dynamics are always going to be there. You meet a horrible boss today, you leave. You meet a more horrible boss wherever you go. You need to find a way to create a niche, carve out a niche for yourself wherever you are.
Okay.
And remember, it's not just one stakeholder.
You mentioned earlier that you when you were young, you were very curious in terms of what this department does, what that department does. How do you do that without making it look like you're being too nosy, or you want to do other people's job, or you want to become annoyed? Or because, again, for example, if I'm in, for example, corporate banking, then tomorrow I'm in retail. What's happening in retail? Tomorrow I'm corporate affairs. The other day I'm like, those finance guys look like they do a good job. What you guys? Yeah. So without being a busybody, how do you strategically do that? Because at the end of the day, it's you that knows you're being deliberate about this, because it's good for your career. It's good for progression. How do you strategically do that?
I think you the best way to do is to volunteer for projects. So like there are sometimes, like we have these change agent projects. Volunteer for projects like that. It gives you access to several different departments within the bank, because it's true, if you're not purposeful about how you do this, you can step on many toes, and many people will think that you are directionless in where you want to take your career. So I find that the best way to do that is to volunteer for projects.
Okay. And earlier I was asking, managing people. How is it? How many people do you oversee in your team?
In total, 14. Then the matrix to me, it's about 22 in total.
Okay. How do you? What are the dynamics of managing people, really?
I think as you get older, you become better at it. People are just like me. We're driven by different things. And what I find, or that works best with people, is be genuine with them. If you care about them and you care about their development, people will see it. If you think little of them, people will still feel it and see it. So, and I don't want to use the word love, you have to love people. And you have to genuinely care for them to be able to look after them in the best way and to see the best in them. Not everybody has the same gifts. Your job as a leader is to identify each one's individual gifts and assign them where they do the best job. So, and they'll feel it. So like if somebody is curious about economics, you say, okay, can you do the weekly economic update for the team? So you give a weekly economic update for the team. They may not necessarily be a good salesperson, but if they can do that well, then it gives them a sense of accomplishment, and it also gives them visibility. So you have to identify unique strengths and assign people to their unique strengths. The other thing about managing people is that there'll always be in a team, there'll always be some toxicity. There's toxicity that you can address, and there are some toxic characters you have to remove. And you have to give people a chance. Sometimes people change, but other times they make the environment so hostile that it's difficult for others to thrive in that environment. Bullies, for instance, they kiss up and they kick down. And you can see it when you look at their subordinates. Those people, for me, I don't like to work with them, and I don't like to keep room for them. So if they can't change, then we probably need to have a conversation about where they want to go.
All right. There's one person I think that... so I had these youngsters that came to me and told me, no, we've been struggling with job interviews. We go, they never call, nothing ever happens. And so they were sharing me some of the questions that they faced. And they told me, there was one time they asked me this question, and they said, they asked you, how do you correct your boss?
How do you correct your boss?
Yes, like, okay, your boss, you know that, okay, this is not correct, this is no.
It's
how
bad.
do you, yes. How do you correct your boss?
You'd always do it in private. That's first. And do it respectfully. So in the same way you want, that's how I treat my subordinates too. I reprimand in private, praise in public. Never take down your boss in public. That's rule 101. And the problem with young people is that they want to address the situation immediately it happens. That's not right. So you can correct them, and they will appreciate it. If they are reasonable, they will appreciate that you have corrected them, but in private.
How do you know that this boss doesn't like being corrected?
They're always right. You know the way they respond, they are always right. But I think there's a way in which you can land. People respect you if you know your craft. And even if somebody doesn't listen, if you know your craft and other people can vouch for your craft, they'll listen. So you have to know your craft. It's like if you are a lawyer who doesn't know the law, no one will listen when you say it's usually just an emotive argument. But if you have facts to back up your correction, then I think people will listen.
Have you
Reasonable people.
Have you ever made a mistake? You know that thing where your subordinate says, maybe let's do it this way, and you insist on your way. Then later on you discover the subordinate was right. This is not right. Do you just, anyway, let's just move on? Or do you go back and say, you know what, actually you're right about this. Let's try it this way.
I go back. And I told them you were right.
Is it easy?
It's easy. For me, it's easy. But I think for other people, they struggle to do that. Because, you see, the expectations of leadership have changed over the years. When we were younger, it was such an authoritarian leadership style. And the leader was always the smartest person in the room. The leader was always right. The leader knew everything. But now you have, people have access to so much information. The teenager of today has access to more information than the US president had 50 years ago, just on the cell phone. So you can't profess to know everything. And the generation today values a much more collaborative means of communication. They respect that. And they want their ideas to be heard. You can't shut up ideas just because you are the oldest person in the room. And if you are the smartest person in the room, then you are not in the right room.
Okay.
Yeah.
Some bosses you find are insecure. They think any good work that you do is meant to get them out of their chair so you can sit in that chair. And so you find even like praising you, they won't praise you because they feel like they're giving you too much clout or they're shining the light so much on you. The day they go on leave, they'll find you've taken over, How do you manage, someone like that who that this person is insecure? And also, as you answer that question, what do you think makes a superior insecure?
Sometimes a superior is insecure when they are not, when you have superior capabilities. And sometimes they are insecure when they don't realize their own value and their own power. So when you are a superior and you have a brilliant subordinate, there are certain things you have that they don't have. For instance, you can have a really smart millennial in your team, but they don't have the life experiences that you have, the maturity that you have. You can't dim their light just because they are smart. I've worked with some really, really smart young men and women, really smart, and they'll take on anybody in a room. All I ask them to do is that if they do it respectfully and with facts. But I can't dim their shine just because they are young. So sometimes leaders are insecure because they want their voice to be the only one that gets heard. And I think the misunderstanding of what leadership really means. A leader is a facilitator. They are not always the smartest person in the room. They are the person that inspires and drives results from other people. Sometimes those people are much smarter than you.
Okay. Yeah, because sometimes it gets so bad for others that, if you've got an undergraduate degree and your boss has an undergraduate degree, you're even scared to start doing your master's because the environment will just become hostile. But yeah, but then also, how do you position yourself for promotion in an organization? How do you begin to say, you know what, I want to rise? How do you strategically position yourself?
Sometimes we misunderstand what the corporate ladder looks like. It's actually not a ladder. It's a greasy corporate pole. So you jump on it, someone has doused it with grease, you are going to slip and fall. But at some point, you find some bumps and you can stand and rest there. But the way you position yourself for promotion is you have to understand exactly what it takes to get to the next grade. Because when I think about Standard Chartered Bank, it's pretty clear what people are looking for in an individual contributor, in a potential leader. It's pretty clear. And if you read, you will understand and you can benchmark yourself against some of those things. But the other thing that is very, very effective, an effective tool to use is feedback from people. So people will tell you sometimes not exactly what you want to hear, but those are the things you need to work on to get to the next level. And the unfortunate thing is that not everybody is going to be a CEO. At some point, you must come to terms with that. Can you not be the best that you are wherever you are? And if you're the best that you are wherever you are, people will see that and they will grow it. But if you're always looking for that job, there's only one CEO role. But if you're a clerk and you want to be the CEO, and you don't build relationships with your line manager, with the people along the hierarchy, those are the people who speak for you, by the way, to take you to the next level. So it's a bit difficult. You have to be patient, but you also have to be deliberate and hardworking before you get to that position. Because God forbid you start work today. In the next 2 years, after undergrad, you are the CEO of Stanchart. There are so many situations that the CEO of Stanchart handles based on his experience, his unique experiences, that you will not be able to handle. So you must know that confidence and being ready are not exactly the same thing. Many times you have to ask other people to give you feedback and seek mentors out. Seek out mentors, seek out sponsors. The thing with sponsors is that they will come if you perform well. When you're young in your career, you have to perform so well that you attract sponsors. Those are the people who speak for you when you're not in the room. Those are the people who make promotion decisions about you when you're not in the room. Because guess what? Your promotion decisions are made when you're not there to defend yourself. So it's really what people perceive of you that counts, not what you think yourself.
Okay. You sit in the executive committee of the bank. Mm-hmm. And at some point, you discuss people.
Yes.
You know, that one. And most people will never know, like you said, because they're never in the room, you know. Mm-hmm. Apart from just getting a sponsor, how do I then begin to... It's like I would like, when they're talking about me, to talk about me like this. Mm-hmm. You get the point, right? Mm-hmm. Because if you're not careful, you're very careless, they'll say things about you in a way that is really going to, lower your prospects at either getting ahead or getting a promotion. How do I then begin to create this perception around me that I am a person that is meant for leadership? I can lead, I can go to the next level. Because sometimes some people on paper have the qualifications, but they are perceived as, Emmy is just for cheating with. Emmy is for story. And that's a perception about them.
Yes. So you kind of have to ask yourself, what is the unique value you bring to an organization? So remember what I said about being purposeful, knowing what your purpose is. You must know what your purpose is. You must know what your role is. You must have values. Because if you don't have values, you'll be the chillest. The person everybody chills with, like, a story, so is the guy. But if you can have story and you can back it up with values, and you can back it up with competence, you can back it up with purpose, and there's no other you're not trying to be someone else, then it's very easy for people to identify you as unique. But you have to be bringing something to the table. Because guess what? People want to work with people who make their work easier, their lives easier. They don't want to work with someone who tells good stories.
Okay. You are a leader. Like you mentioned, you got like over 20 people that you oversee. How do you, as the leader, create a growth environment in the workplace? Because I feel like the leader is the one that sets the tone for the kind of environment that you have. If the leader is the first one to gossip, then gossiping becomes the order of the day in that department or in that unit. How do I, as a leader, create a growth environment where people are fluid, they do the work, but then also they believe that I can rise when I perform?
What I try to do is I try to make myself as accessible as possible. And until we moved into our head office in 2021, I used to have an office. Now I don't have an office. So I positioned myself at a place where when you open the door, I'm the first person you see, or the second person you see. I'm the first or second person you see. Usually the leader will sit at the back of the room where nobody can see them. And people tell me that, Emmy, as a leader, you should be sitting at the back so that people can't see you. But why is that? Because I want to be an accessible leader. I want to be an approachable leader. And I also want to see people as they pass. So I try to be accessible, but you also have to be approachable, and you have to take an interest. Knowing who who everybody is, what drives them, what they are good at, seeking them out. So like there are some people in the office who are really quiet, but they are really working. There are two such people in my department. There's a young lady, her work is exceptional. Her work ethic is exceptional. And then there's a gentleman, he won't greet you. You think he's rude. But when you ask him, hey, how are you? He smiles, the most beautiful smile. So you when you create an environment like that, people also want to do better. They want to come to work. You can't come, you set the tone, you set the mood as a leader. If I walk into the office and I've got an angry face and I sit down, guess what? Everybody's going to feel like this place is tense. And everybody's going to be tense. If I walk into the room and I say, hi, everyone, and people can see I'm busy, but they feel comfortable. And that's what I try to do. And also I identify different growth opportunities for different people. So right now I have one lady who's working on her executive presence. And I've made sure that we've paid for her to do it at a very reputable university, with a very reputable university. I don't have that training myself, but it is my hope that when that lady is finished, that we can all learn from her. So if she can be better than me, then that's a good thing, because I'm not always going to be the head of corporate banking. And if I grow myself out of this job, then guess what? People will give me the next best job. But if I continue to be relied on as a person who doesn't have a team strong enough to take over from them, then I will never leave this job. So it's, I think for leaders, it's a tough one. The minute you get promoted into a role, start grooming a successor. Because when you groom a successor, you can move on to the next level.
That's actually good, because I think I was telling someone, I was like, sometimes the company won't promote you if there's no one to replace you.
Yes.
So there's an opening that you want to get, but you are forgetting that where you're sitting, someone else has to come there and you haven't groomed them. But maybe, again, that thing you say where you sit and you're the first person they see, sometimes people feel like, maybe she wants to see who comes early, who leaves early. So people waiting for 17 hours because the boss will see you at the door. But it's a good thing. I think the fact that you look out for opportunities that you don't have, because like I said, someone who's secure feel like, because she has executive presence, I don't have, she will then take over me, and that kind of thing. But what exactly is executive presence?
Executive presence is like when you walk into the room, in simple words, I think when you walk into the room, people can feel your gravitas. Like, do you feel like a leader when people experience you? There are some people sometimes, you can be talking, but they're right here. Then you said, you're here. Have you just come? That. So can people associate you with leadership? Even before you say I'm a leader, for instance, just by your gravitas, your speech, your being. That's what I think executive presence means to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have to work on my executive presence.
We all do.
There's always been this conversation about, hard skills and soft skills. What do you think are the necessary soft skills that someone who is vying for leadership should have?
You should have a high sense of emotional intelligence, a high sense of responsibility, and very good interpersonal skills. So emotional intelligence is knowing yourself. Knowing where your red button is. Because, there are some people, your red button sometimes sits under your armpit. Nobody opens it. But there are some people who are so brave, they will open your arm and even press the red button. So how do you react when they press that little red button? You should be measured enough to react in a way that is reasonable. So emotional intelligence, interpersonal skills, and what was the last one I said? Forgotten. I said 3. But those, for me, are the most important.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how do you tell that, okay, here there's a lack of emotional intelligence?
There are some people who always have to be right. And there are some people who, even when they are senior, like when I walk into the room, when people walk into the room, when my team walk into the room, they know I'm the head of corporate banking. But I can't always say, as the head of corporate banking. You know what I mean? They know this. Who am I telling? Really? It's on my job description. It's on my business card. You differentiate yourself from the title. You know what I mean? No one cares, really. And everybody knows. So it's like, get over yourself.
It's like, good morning, how are you? No, as head of corporate banking, I'm fine.
Who cares?
How do you deal with non-performers? Like, you've got a subordinate they're not performing.
Non-performers are very hard to deal with. As a rule for the bank, we have to have monthly check-ins with people. So there should be no surprises at the end of the year when you do the performance review that, hey, the performance is bad. So if somebody's performance is bad, the biggest point is that you have to be candid that, hey, this is going south. Can you improve on this? By the time you do it the next month and the next month, if there's still no improvement, then at the end of the year, then you give them a rating where an improvement, then you need to see an improvement. And if you don't see an improvement over a sustained period of time, you have to let them go. It's not always the easiest thing to do. I've done it twice in my career, and I didn't enjoy it. But it's necessary, because if you tolerate non-performance within the team, then everybody thinks that the standard is dropping. They can survive so long they do the barest minimum, or they don't even have to do the barest minimum. Then you erode the morale from the rest of the team. So if somebody is consistently a poor performer, they're either a bad fit or they're going through something. If they're going through something, you can work through it. But if they're a bad fit for the role, then you have to have a candid conversation about where they want to go.
All right. There's some people now on the other side of the coin. We've talked about bad performers. There are others who are exceptional at their job, but you find that they've got the wrong attitude. They're proud. They're what? But when it comes to the job, they ace it. How do you get those in line?
Sometimes you can't. And sometimes the conversation has to be about where do they finally end up. Their performance is good, but you can't grow that kind of behavior to leadership, because leadership is about working with people. If the person is working with people and antagonizing people, then you don't make for effective leadership. Sometimes they need a role where they have as little exposure to people as possible, or they need a new environment.
Okay.
Maybe a new country.
Yeah, you remind me of this thing I saw where they're saying sometimes we're working hard in the wrong country.
Yes. I've never heard that, but that's good.
You're working hard in the wrong country. There are people who are ambitious. I want to grow. I want to reach this level. But there are some mistakes, and obviously being in leadership for a long time, you can see, okay, this person is ambitious, but they're going about it the wrong way. What is the wrong way of going about, wanting to rise in your career?
Stepping on everybody's toes, taking credit for other people's work, discrediting others. That's the wrong way to rise. So you don't have to rise at the expense of everybody. You can carry everybody along, and you can rise despite the challenges around you. But please, for goodness sake, don't rise at the expense of everyone else.
Okay. Mm-hmm. The other thing I find out is when it comes to promotion, okay, you find that some people really don't see beyond this position. I am here. I want this position. I work so hard. When I get here now, I go, oh, okay. And then, how then do you still here? I want to go here. I want to go here. Like you said, without stepping on anybody else, but just being able to carve a path, for example, and say, okay, look, this is 2010. By 2015, I must be here. 2017, I must be that. And then also, do you share your plans with your boss? Because they always say, so if you tell them, they become, because it's like telling your boss, next year I want to be in your position, Others, like I said, will feel threatened. Do you feel it's a good idea for you to go to your boss and tell them what your plans are? Others say, no, hide hold your cards very close to your chest. They can't what? They can't mess what they don't know. They can't, things like that.
No, I think, and coincidentally, we were discussing this with my sister yesterday. When you tell people what you want, it's easier for you to make it happen. They'll give you different perspectives. We've always been told that we should hold our cards close to our chest. But doesn't really help, because guess what? The information you had when you put the cards here is the same information you have when you put them on your lap. But if you open up your cards, people will tell you, hey, this card, I think you should remove this card. This card, refer to it later. This card, use it now. So it's important for you to tell your people leader where you want to go. You don't necessarily have to be specific about the role itself, but you can say, oh, look, I'm looking for a leadership role. Because when I was looking for a leadership role, I'd been a lone player for some time. And I said, I think I'm now ready to grow my career and I would like a leadership role. And the leadership role which presented itself, was not as glamorous as other people thought. And I remember having a conversation with one colleague who said, Emmy, you got that job. Huh? So what is your overall contribution to the bank? I said, okay, it was very little, but I didn't say the number because I didn't want to say it, and I knew where the conversation was going. But it propelled me to the next level of leadership. So sometimes you have to take something smaller, which grows you in a different area, to grow to the next level. So, and sometimes you don't always know that. Like when I started work, I was a customer service rep. My ambition was not to be the head of corporate banking. Sometimes an ambition is built as you go along. And sometimes, guess what? Other people identify you for a role. Because when you reach a certain level, even if you apply, if you haven't been called, if you haven't been identified and called, you're just applying. So how do you make yourself, the point is you have to make yourself a natural choice for certain roles, especially very senior roles.
And talking about very senior roles, you had a very senior role in the bank. You are in the executive committee. In Zambia, your next job, if you're in the bank, is either CEO or you find the job out elsewhere. At that highest level of, your career or management in an organization, what happens there, that John and Joseph won't see, on the first floor or in the branch and whatnot, that really happens there? And also, what kind of character is required to sustain where you are? Because some people, it will come, then it will
go. The first thing is you have to earn your seat at the table. And when I became a member of the executive, my CEO then said, I knew really well. When I went into the meetings, I knew my business really well. And I only spoke when it was time to speak about my business. So he called me to his office and he said, Emmy, you are not here as a representative of corporate banking. You are here as an executive female leader in the bank. The expectation from me is that your contributions will cut across. And that's the expectation when you reach a certain, at the executive level. You're not just a specialist in your area. I should be able to speak about retail. I should be able to see retail banking. I should be able to see synergies between myself, a corporate banker, and my colleague, Mwansa, who heads the retail bank. I should be able to see synergies between my colleague who runs the transaction banking and my colleague who runs the financial markets. And what unique value do I bring to the CEO when he's interacting with various stakeholders? What value am I adding to him? When the guys in finance look at me, do they see somebody who they can get an honest view of the business and the strategy from, and the overall strategy, not just my strategy, but overall strategy of the bank? That's what people are looking for. They are looking for a general player, but also a skilled expert in their area.
Okay.
That's what I think.
And sustaining it?
Sustaining it. The first thing you do, I learned this from a very wise woman. I asked her, she's a very senior woman, and she said, when I start a job, the first thing I make my peers aware of is that I'm not a threat to them. I'm here to collaborate with them. I'm here to contribute to making their work easy. We're here for one single purpose. We're here for me to grow the overall top line and bottom line of the bank. How can we do that together? So immediately they know that I'm not a threat. So I think that's the most important thing. The other thing is for your superiors, for my CEO, for my function head, how can I be that repository of information, strategic information, market information that is necessary for those high-level conversations that they're having? So those are the things that I really try to do my best for.
All right. If you look back at your career, what would you say you would have loved to do differently?
I think I should have been... I should have enjoyed myself, especially in my younger years. I should have been more confident than I was. I felt like I had to achieve a certain level of information for me to be confident. Because I find some people are confident with not much. I should have been more confident, yes, in my younger years.
Okay.
Yeah.
There are a lot of young people, that are trying to build careers like yours, and even, beyond where you are. If you had to give them 5 things as advice, what 5 things would you say to them?
I would say be purposeful. The 5 B's. And I read this from the Harvard Business Review about purposeful leadership. Be purposeful. Know your purpose. Be values-oriented. Be authentic. Be clear about who you are and about your role. And be clear about who your stakeholders are.
Okay.
Yeah.
The question I want to ask that I forgot to ask, and we're coming to an end now. If I make a mistake at work, how do I go about addressing it?
First, you have to tell people you have made a mistake, because the problem is that when we make a mistake, we like to hide it. You need to tell people that you have made a mistake. Not everyone. You need to tell your line manager that you have made a mistake. And organizations today are becoming much less punitive than they were in the past. So, like when we look at even our own disciplinary process, it's much more fair than it was in the past, because in the past it was very prescriptive. So every situation is different. But if the sooner you flag it as an issue and as a mistake, the sooner you can get it addressed.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time, Emmy.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So it was a nice chat. I didn't even see the time pass.
Yeah, it's almost an hour. Our hourglass is almost running out. It's almost an hour. But thank you very much for sparing the time.
Thank you very much for having me.
And I do know that a lot of people have really resonated with what you've said. The organizations may be different, but I feel the principles are the same.
Exactly.
Yeah,
yes.
The principles are the same. But then also, how do you manage to stay in one place for a long time?
Because I do different things in the same organization. I've had so many different jobs within the same organization. It appears that I've been in one place, but I really haven't. I've moved around quite a lot. So I sometimes when I can't get the job I want, I expand my responsibilities. So there was a time when I felt like I had one job for a long time. I expanded my responsibilities and I brought on diversity and inclusion initiatives, and I became the country diversity and inclusion champion over and above my job.
Okay.
So that's how I broaden my experience. So it doesn't feel like I'm going to the same workplace for 15 years. I don't know, every day. It doesn't feel like that. Every day feels different to me.
And how do you think people who actually do the same job can, maintain relevance or maintain the same level of energy? For example, people in the civil service, you can find someone who's been doing the same job for 15 years, 20 years.
That's a tough one. Because I think you have to find ways of making it new. You have to keep, because there's always new research about stuff. So if you can apply those to your role, it doesn't feel like the same thing over and over again.
Okay.
No, it's a lot about personal development.
No, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
I hope we'll come back later on and make a follow up on how far you go. But thank you so much. Otherwise.
Thank you very much for having me. So I really enjoyed this interview.
No, it's a pleasure. Yeah.